Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Katrice Justice and I'm a 23-year-old from Ottawa, Ontario. I'm going to be making content on this channel about personal finance, business, and lifestyle, so make sure to subscribe. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I purchased my first home at the age of 22. So let's get into it. At the start of the pandemic, so that was like March 2020, I was starting to spend a lot of time on TikTok. I would be up until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., you name it, just watching so many TikTok videos. The main area that kind of piqued my interest from these TikTok videos was the people talking about personal finance and different apps available to us in Canada to start investing. I saw a lot of content about Wealthsimple Trade and Questrade, and that really caught my attention and kind of pushed me to start investing, which I didn't know much about at the time. Just over a year later, so in May 2021, I graduated from university, and my mom and I started having conversations about renting versus owning and just exploring our situation a little bit now that I was working full time and making an income for myself. At the time, we were renting a townhome and it really wasn't fitting our needs. And my mom also expressed that she would be retiring in the next 5 years and she doesn't want to be responsible for paying rent or anything like that when she is in retirement. When my mom expressed this idea to me, I knew right away that there wouldn't necessarily be a difference because $2,000 in rent versus $2,000 in mortgage is still $2,000 that you're spending each month. But I did have another idea. So I told her that if she's looking to essentially cut down her household expenses, then the property type that she should be looking for is more of like a duplex, so 2 units, or a triplex, 3 units, something like that, where essentially she could get other people to cover the mortgage. So for example, if she were to buy a triplex, so that would be 3 units, and let's say the mortgage on that property was $3,000 per month, then let's say she's living in the bottom unit and she's renting out the top 2 units at $1,500 a piece. 1,500 plus 1,500 is 3,000, and she would be left paying essentially nothing other than her maintenance fees or whatever property costs that she would have to take care of. So after I mentioned that, she liked the idea, and her and I actually started exploring potentially buying a property of some sort together. But this was at the height of the pandemic where everything was super high. There was a lot of bidding wars going on, and we really didn't have a sufficient down payment. And by the time we could invest our way to a sufficient down payment or save our way to a sufficient down payment, we would have been waiting for years and years. Around the same time that these conversations were going on, my grandmother was having increasing difficulty in the property that she lived in. So my grandmother owned a 3-bedroom single-family home that she lived in by herself. So whenever there was any type of emergency, we would have to be driving over there, taking her to the hospital or taking care of her, whatever the need was. And we really weren't comfortable with her living alone. So that was a concern that we also had. Since we had concerns about that, and we were also thinking about buying a property for ourselves so that we would no longer be renters, I came up with the idea of pooling our resources and potentially moving into a home together. When I shared the idea with my mom, she really liked it. And I knew right then that my biggest challenge would be convincing my grandmother to sell her house. I remember the first day that I started kind of pitching the idea to my grandmother. I was showing her different new construction properties on my laptop, and I was saying, look, we could add this in, we could take this out, we could have like a 3-car garage and a bunch of different things. My grandmother was pretty much just like, like we'll see, and just, kind of brushing me off. So while I was continuing to explore the real estate market, I learned that a lot of the properties on the Gatineau, Quebec side were fitting our needs more than what was available on the Ontario side. So I pitched that idea to my grandmother as well. And again, she was just kind of like, like we'll see type thing. But then a few days later, she told me that she had like multiple sleepless nights just over the thought of moving to the Quebec side. So needless to say, that was no longer an option for our family. So a few weeks after that conversation took place, there was a property that came up on the market that was just a few doors down from my grandmother's house. The only difference between that house and my grandmother's house was that the property was a bungalow. So my grandmother was having a lot of trouble with going up and down the stairs in her single family home. So my mom figured that, okay, maybe the bungalow would be a good option for her to move to. At least that would solve her stairs problem. But the only problem that it wouldn't have solved, which was obviously a big problem, is that my grandmother would have still been living alone. My mom proceeded to do a meeting with the real estate agent. She invited me to join this meeting. It took place over Zoom. But at the time, I was like, no, I'm not joining this meeting because I know that Nana, that's my grandma, I know that she doesn't want to sell, and I'm not going to waste my time because she's clearly not interested. Although I didn't participate in the meeting, I was listening to it from a distance. And my mom was telling the real estate agent just about the different options that we were thinking of in terms of buying and selling. So she explained that we were thinking of either my grandmother just buying a property that better suits her needs and moving by herself, or B, potentially all of us moving in together. And then after the meeting, my mom called my grandmother and she was telling her about the property and how it's on her street. And my grandmother was like, the property on my street, you know, that's the property that the lady that I knew passed away in, right? And my mom was like, oh my, I didn't even put two and two together. But yeah, needless to say, my grandmother did not want to move to that property, and I get it. Luckily, one good thing came out of that meeting, which was the fact that my grandmother was now willing to meet with a real estate agent and discuss what selling her property might look like in terms of numbers and everything like that. So a couple days after the first meeting with the agent, we met with a second agent to discuss selling my grandmother's property. I was at this meeting, my mom was at this meeting, and of course, my grandmother was at this meeting. So pretty much we did a tour of the house with the agent, told him some information, he gave us some information, and then he told us, okay, given the market, I think that you can get whatever amount if you sell the property right now. So I learned a lot of information that day because I found out the price that my grandmother actually paid for that property 40 something years ago. And then I found out the price that we could sell it for in 2022. Long story short, when I heard the numbers, I was immediately like, yeah, it's time to sell. It's been a good run. It's been a good 40 years, but bye to the property. Surprisingly, my grandmother was also very on board. I don't know if it was because of the numbers or if it was because of the whole person on her street passing away, but she was pretty much ready to sell. And we had a lot of work ahead of us. Pretty much after that meeting, the ball just started to roll and everything started happening super fast. So we had to start decluttering my grandmother's house, which was a huge project in itself. We had to rent a huge garbage bin. We had to donate a bunch of stuff. I was going back and forth, filling up my car with stuff to donate so many times. So a few days after the meeting, the first real estate agent that we were speaking with ended up contacting us. She said that there's a property that's not even officially on the market yet, but I think it meets all of your needs. So would you like to go see it? So the property had more than enough space to park all of the cars that we own. And it also had more than enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. My mom and I looked at the different images for the property. I personally was extremely underwhelmed, but my mom really liked it and she was like, let's go see it anyways. So later that evening, we went to go see the property. I think we picked up my grandmother and then all three of us drove to the property. So it ended up being a very, very good thing that we went to see this property in person because my thoughts on it completely changed. Everything inside of this house was absolutely gorgeous. The kitchens were gorgeous, the tilings, the bathrooms, everything was very much my style. And honestly, the pictures online did not do this property justice whatsoever. At the end of the tour, we had a quick discussion with the real estate agent. She was asking us, like, what do you think of the property? Do you want to put in a bid? Things like that. And I remember saying that if we want to stay on the Ontario side, then we need to put a bid in on this property because it accounts for all of our needs. Plus, it was absolutely gorgeous, far more gorgeous than any property we've ever lived in our entire lives. So I wanted that house. So a few days later, this was on a Saturday, we knew that around 9 p.m., our real estate agent would be calling us to tell us whether or not our offer was accepted for the property. So all three of us were together at my grandmother's former property and just waiting to hear whether or not we got the property. The real estate agent started off the conversation by telling us, oh, you know, there was X amount of offers on the property. A lot of them bid over asking, yada, yada, yada. And then she goes, "You guys were chosen." And that's when we were all jumping for joy. We were super happy to be chosen for that property. Like I said, I completely fell in love with the property, and I'm someone who's very picky, especially when it comes to like home interior. So I really, really wanted that property, and I'm so happy that we did end up getting it. Immediately after we signed the paperwork to purchase our house, we knew that it had to be go, go, go to get my grandmother's house ready to put on the market because a large part of our down payment was going to be coming from there. So although we did use a large portion of money from the sale of my grandmother's house to purchase this property, my mom and I did pitch in a lot of money as well because we had to pay for the deposit on the property. And then we also had to pay for the closing costs and all of the legal fees associated with buying a property, which that was not cheap. My bank account is still recovering, but we moved. Overall, buying my first house was a very fast process, and I honestly wasn't expecting it to happen as soon as it did. I remember last year I wrote out a bunch of goals on sticky notes and posted them on my wall. For this goal in particular, I didn't think it was going to happen for like at least 3 to 5 years, but it happened a lot sooner. So a little tip from me is honestly write down your goals, big or small, post them where you can see them, and magic will happen because that's honestly what happened to me. We've been so happy in our new home. And another good thing is that in a couple years, we have an option to rent out a portion of the home, which really satisfies one of my mom's big concerns at the time was minimizing her expenses when she retires. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I think it definitely gives you a unique perspective on buying a house using multi-generational wealth. If you have any additional questions or topics that you want me to talk about, make sure to leave a comment down below and I can film a video answering those questions. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe, and also feel free to leave comments down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.